The Republic has been Plato's most famous and extensively read discourse since the middle of the 18th century. Socrates is the major figure, as he is in most other Platonic dialogues. The Republic is usually acknowledged to be one of Plato's middle period dialogues. In the first conversation with Plato, Socrates challenges the assertions of his interlocutors, and the conversation ends without a suitable resolution to the issue at hand. But in the Republic, we see Socrates forming an opinion on justice and how it relates to eudaimonia, happiness. He makes a detailed, convoluted, but cogent case for the just life and its indispensable relationship to happiness. Two major issues are discussed in the conversation. What constitutes justice is the first query. Socrates responds to this query by discussing both the person or soul and political communities. Is the just person happier than the unjust person? Is the second and dialogue's central question, which he addresses in this way. Or how do justice and happiness relate to one another? Plato's philosophical interests in the dialogue are ethical and political given the two primary topics of discussion. Socrates and his interlocutors create the Kallipolis, a just city, in a speech to answer these two problems. They do this to define justice before going on to use an analogy to show justice in the human soul. Socrates examines a wide range of topics while arguing for a just life, including various competing theories of justice, opposing conceptions of what makes a person happy, education, the nature and significance of philosophy and philosophers, knowledge, the structure of reality, the forms, the virtues and vices, good and bad souls, good and bad political regimes, the family, the role of women in society, the role of art in society, and even the afterlife. Numerous interpretive challenges are presented by the dialogue's broad scope, which has led to hundreds of scholarly works. One must wrestle with these issues to attempt to understand the dialogue's argument as a whole. The question's characteristics. The Republic's quandary first appears in Book 1 in the form of Cephalus. Cephalus responds that the finest thing about riches is that it might prevent us from acting unjustly and thereby pave the way for a pleasant afterlife. After Socrates asks his host what it is like to be elderly, 328 DE, and affluent, 330 D, which we could consider to be pretty impolite, 330d, 331b. Socrates wants to know what justice is, therefore this is enough to raise more queries. Naturally, Cephalus and Polemarchus are unable to provide a definition of justice that will hold up to Socratic scrutiny, but they nonetheless continue to believe that justice is an important component of a good existence. When Thrasymachus has had enough of this conversation, 336 AB, he explodes and refutes the notion that it is admirable to be just. According to Thrasymachus, see particularly 343c, 344c, justice is typically established by the powerful for the weak to uphold the interests of the powerful. According to this perspective, the powerful are better off ignoring justice and acting only in their own best interests. In actuality, both interpretations are distorted, based more on the moral philosophy of the present than that of Plato. Socrates decides to focus on the fundamental issue of how justice relates to the just person's success or happiness in the real world, Greek eudaimonia. In Book 1, he made the case that justice, as a virtue, helps the soul fulfill its purpose and that a good life makes a person fortunate and joyful, 352d, 354a, quoting 354a1. He keeps the person who wants to be happy in mind at the start of Book 2. According to him, fairness is among the best kinds of things, and anyone who is going to enjoy blessings should value it both for its own sake and for the benefits it would bring, 358a1 and 3. Given this viewpoint, Socrates must demonstrate why, aside from the effects that pertain to the appearance of being just or unjust, rationally pursuing one's happiness prefers being just, which necessitates always acting justly, over being unjust, which tolerates temptation to injustice and worse. He need not demonstrate the link between doing what is right and being happy, though. According to the first book's function argument, being joyful and acting justly go hand in hand. If Socrates maintains this identity, he may demonstrate both the value of justice in and of itself as well as the happiness of the just. Two strategies were rejected. After accepting Glaucon and Adeimantus' challenge, Socrates departs in an odd direction, from 367e. The unsatisfactory argument that justice in a city is broader and more obvious than justice in a person leads Socrates to a rambling discussion of certain characteristics of a good city. He proposes seeking justice as a virtue of cities before defining justice as a virtue of persons, 368c, 369b, 369b before 27c. This could appear confusing. But Socrates' deceptive strategy is not unintentional. Numerous other more direct paths are disregarded by the arguments from Book 1 and the challenge from Glaucon and Adeimantus. First, Socrates would have attempted to swiftly agree on an accepted definition of what justice is before evaluating whether it is always in one's best interests. However, Book 1 disproves commonly held notions of fairness, disqualifying this tactic. To respond to the question posed to him, Socrates must define justice, and what he may say is significantly circumscribed. 3. The selective approach. This task's complexity explains why Socrates chooses to proceed unusually when talking about civic justice and happiness. Socrates would hypothesize that a just city is usually wealthier or happier than an unjust one. The supposition is made without hesitation by Glaucoma and Adeimantus. Socrates will have a model to provide for the relationship between personal justice and flourishing if he can then demonstrate how a just city is always more prosperous and happy than an unjust one by presenting an account of civic justice and civic happiness. Socrates' plan is based on a comparison between a person and a city. Between what makes a city successful and what makes a person successful, there must be some discernible connection. But to respond to the Republic's query, Socrates does not require any specific justification for why the comparison holds or even that the analogy hold in general, that is, for a wide range of characteristics. Even if it merely introduces a theory of personal justice and happiness that we might not have previously contemplated, it still succeeds. Although the city dweller analogy just needs to accomplish this, Socrates occasionally seems to make further assertions, and one of the Republic's enduring mysteries relates to the precise nature and justification of the full similarity that Socrates asserts. Sometimes it looks as though Socrates is arguing that since the same account of any predicate, such as F, must also apply to all things that are F, the same account of fairness must also apply to both individuals and cities, e.g., 434d, 435a. The Republic is a massive work that has a tremendously broad influence and is filled with exquisite intricacies. But in the end, what does the work say to us in terms of our efforts to live well or contribute to our society's efforts to live well, as well as what does it say to us in terms of our efforts to comprehend how to think about how to live well? The Republic's core ethical precept is that, if possible, one should seek wisdom; if not, one should follow the wisest teachers they can find. The philosophical life is best, and if one lacks knowledge, one should prefer to learn from an expert. This is a lesson that is well known from Plato's Socratic dialogues. The Republic, however, describes philosophy differently. First, it respects the strength of passions and desires considerably more than the Socratic debates do. In addition to the ability to withstand a Socratic test, 534 BC, wisdom explicitly calls for the habituation of spirited and appetitive attitudes, 485a, 486b, 519a8, b1, the conversion of psychological energy from spirited and appetitive desires to philosophical desires, cf. 485d, and the ongoing attention to and maintenance of the desires that come from the non-calculating parts of one's soul, 571d, 572b, 589a, cf. 416e, 417b. Second, the Socrates of the Republic insists that wisdom necessitates understanding how the world is, which entails apprehending the fundamental mathematical and teleological structure of things, in contrast to the Socrates of the Socratic dialogues, who avows ignorance and is content with the belief that the world is well ordered. Third, even though the Socrates of the Socratic dialogues engages in philosophical practice rather than in everyday political existence, he maintains that his life is more in line with what political art wants than an everyday political existence is. The philosopher, however, wishes to be completely detached from politics, especially in normal circumstances, according to the Republic, 496 CE, 592a, cf. 520a, b. The Republic's ethical philosophy is best described as eudaemonist, which holds that a person should act to further his or her success or happiness, eudaimonia. In contrast to other theories of ethics, Socrates does not support this one. Instead, he merely thinks that success gives a person compelling reasons to behave, and he contends that success necessitates moral behavior. How was the video? Did you enjoy it? Post your feedback in our comments section below and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more updates.